Listen carefully to this part of the video. You are a wife. How dare you treat yourself like you are some kind of a side chick? You are not a side chick. A wife means that you have certain rights that other wives have. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to my channel. I pray that you are all in the best of health and iman. If you are new, welcome. My name is Nafisa. I am a Muslimah life coach and I support Muslim women with relationship and mental health issues. So if you're interested in being coached in those areas, you can find me over on my website, which I will leave linked in the description box down below. But over here on YouTube, I make Islamic lifestyle as well as dawah content. So if you're interested in that, then definitely make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Before all of that, I'm actually a teacher. So if you're interested in home tuition, online tuition for your children between the ages of 8 and 18 in maths, English and science, then definitely find out more info on my website as well. Now, in today's video, I have decided to title this video, The Case of the Halal Side Chick. Quite a strong title. So what do I mean by a halal side chick? There's no such thing, right? Well, what I'm referring to is women who agree to come into polygamous relationships but then decide to forego some of their rights, and the consequences that foregoing your rights can have on your relationship once you actually begin to live as a polygamous or begin to live in a polygamous marriage. So this video, I wanted to mention a few things that I want sisters who are thinking about going into polygamous relationships to consider when it comes to foregoing their rights. Okay, so it goes without saying, Muslim men are allowed, they are permitted, they've been given that permission by Allah to marry up to 4 wives if they can treat them all fairly. And so, yeah, Muslim women have the option to be part of polygamous relationships if they choose to. This video particularly is addressed to either the 2nd, the 3rd or the 4th wife. And I want you, if you're a woman considering to come into a relationship where you are an additional wife, that you should be careful about foregoing some of your rights. One of the rights that sisters sometimes forego when they're going into polygamous relationships is the right to be provided for. Now, just because you are going into a polygamous marriage, it doesn't mean that you should expect any less of a provision from your husband. However, if you feel like you are bringing in an income and what you have is enough for you and your children, and you don't want to add that additional financial burden on your husband, then of course it is goodness, it is charity if you do it with a good intention. What I will caution you when it comes to foregoing your right to be provided for here, for those sisters thinking of going into these relationships, is that, with men, sometimes they only value what they work hard for. And they often don't even know that they have this mindset. But oftentimes it is the case that this is the mindset that they carry, that they value what they work hard for. And so when you go into a marriage and you are not expecting your husband to financially provide for you at all, really you take away that sense of responsibility that he feels that he has over you. And I feel like that is a mistake that some sisters make, because initially sisters sometimes think it's a good idea. I can cope, I can manage. But as life goes on, maybe they have children also for this man, or maybe their job is not doing as well as it once was. Then what you often find is that the sister then wants to say, well, I don't want to work anymore, or I can't work anymore. I'm not bringing in enough income, so please support me. And then that's where you find conflict begins to happen, because this man was never expecting to financially have to provide for you. And so in those cases, we sometimes make it easier for men to take multiple wives that they don't have to be financially responsible for. So we can't pick and choose as and when even though we have the right to pick and choose whether we want to contribute financially or not as wives. But if you go into a marriage letting a man know that he doesn't have to provide for you, you can't then start to put so much pressure on him later on, because he may not have planned out his life to, find a way of earning extra income so that he can take care of all of his wives. And so what we find here sometimes is that you have a woman who is struggling with being in a masculine role, even though she has a husband. And then she begins to complain about so many other things, that being the main complaint that I've heard of, because she's upset at the idea that she has to financially be responsible for herself and maybe her children, even though she has a husband whose responsibilities it is to do that to the best of his ability. Okay. Now, if I encourage sisters to not to forego their rights for financial provision, then I know that I'm automatically saying that a lot of men don't qualify to marry multiple wives. Because one of the conditions to marrying multiple wives is that you can provide for them, at least the bare minimum, which is a roof over their head and food to feed, basic clothes to wear, things like that. Sometimes I know women are willing to let go of, his financial responsibility. I don't want to add more pressure on him. And that is coming from a place of maybe desperation sometimes because maybe a woman has reached a certain age and she just feels like, look, I just need companionship. I have enough of my own. I can look after myself. Sometimes it might be desperation just because there aren't enough men, enough good men at least to marry. And so a woman feels like, well, if he fulfills all the other characteristics and he's good in those cases, then I'm happy to provide for myself. But like I said, this is something for women to really think carefully about when you are telling a man, I don't expect you to provide for me. It's okay. You don't have to provide for me. You have to be prepared to constantly have to work to provide for yourself. And you can't force him when you choose to provide for you because he might not have the resources in place. So what I would recommend for sisters who are looking to go into polygamous marriages is that you make it clear to the man that you expect him to provide for you fully. Okay. However, if you're willing to contribute, then you're willing to contribute. Financially providing for you doesn't always mean that he has to give you the same level of accommodation as the first wife has. So for example, if his first wife and children are living in a 3-bedroom flat and you are on your own, you also expect him to rent you a 3-bedroom flat or to buy you a 3-bedroom flat. No. What are you going to do with all of that extra space? What it just means is that he has to provide somewhere for you to live. So if you have a 1-bedroom flat, that's fair enough. At least he's paying the bills. What we do sometimes as women, we forego some of our rights and then we begin to complain when we see the consequences. Because when that man doesn't feel a sense of responsibility over you, in some way, you may sense that you feel like you're less of a wife. And that is because a man likes to provide for his family. It gives him that sense of manliness, that sense of fulfilling his role and his duties the way he should do. And so it gives him a sense of pride and a sense of ownership. When you decide that, superwoman, here I come, I can do it all by myself, independent woman, therefore husband, sit back, chill, relax in your feminine, and I will go hunting. When you decide that, please don't be surprised when he gets upset at you when you start later on demanding that he provides for you all of a sudden. Because like I said, he may have gone into that marriage expecting that you will take care of yourself. So he hasn't put things into place to ensure that he has the financial capability to carry you as well. So I just want you to bear that in mind and not to go into marriage being bitter later on because your husband isn't providing for you, but yet he's providing for his first wife, okay? So keep that in mind. The second aspect of being a side chick that I want sisters to avoid and make sure they don't end up experiencing as wives in polygamous marriages is this aspect of having your husband present with you. So if you married a man or you're in a polygamous relationship but he doesn't live with you, or he's not planning to live with you, let's say you're in the talking phases and you know that you're going to be either in separate countries or in separate cities or just separate homes. Make sure he knows and has a clear idea of how he's going to manage his time between the two of you, and make sure it's very realistic. Why do I say this? Because, as in like the side chick experiences that women have, is that when you are his side piece, you're not his priority, which I will come to in a second. And he obviously doesn't live with you. He lives with his family. And therefore, what some women end up experiencing as side chicks is this sense of loneliness. And you want to be careful that when you are a wife, a halal wife as Allah has ordained it to be, you want to be careful that you don't end up depressed because you're feeling lonely because you hardly have any time with your husband. What I'm seeing starting to happen these days is that men expect to have to say to a woman, I would like to have you as my second, my third, or my fourth wife, but I may only see you once a year. And I'm actually going to live with my first wife, and you, the second wife, or you, the third or the fourth, I might not see you. I might only see you for a month in the whole year. And I know some women, it works for them. Initially, it sounds like, you know what, I don't really want someone in my space 24/7 anyways. Especially if the sister that's coming into the polygamous marriage already has a family, she already has children, they're already settled. Sometimes it makes sense just not to have another man there 24/7. But you have to be careful about the timing, because when you're only seeing your husband for 4 weeks, 3 weeks in the whole year, and he's actually spending majority of his time living and sharing a life with his other wife, you will find that you will become very resentful and very lonely very, very quickly. Okay, very, very quickly. So please be careful about that. In the ideal world, what I would say you should seek for is that he's able to equally share his time. If he spends 6 months there, he can spend 6 months here. If it's not reasonable because of work and all of that stuff, can you move to where he is? If you can't move to where he is and it's getting a bit too complicated, then I just think you should question whether this relationship is actually for you or not. Because my personal belief is that marriage is not just to fulfill your physical needs. Marriage is for companionship as well. And sometimes it's not enough to have a relationship through the phone. You know, what happens when he goes with this whole family to go and visit someone, and every weekend they're having a nice family time, and you're there as the second, third or fourth wife, all by yourself, all alone, because your husband can't be there. After a while, initially it might not sound like a big deal, but after a while you're really going to be feeling that sense of loneliness, and you're going to start building a sense of resentment either towards your husband or towards his first wife or wives and their family. And despite that you are part of that family, you're not going to feel like you're part of that family because you're physically not together. So please, sisters, think about this carefully. How is he going to share his time? Is there going to be a fair share of you being able to see him also? And it's not just, I would like to. The man is not saying, I would like to spend more, do it half and half. No, it's not that. There is a concrete plan of him being able to see you both equally, or at least in a fair way, because, maybe to some women, they don't mind if it's not equal, as long as they get to see enough of their husbands. And what enough is different for different women. Okay, so please, sisters, be conscious of this, because you don't want to be like a side chick who barely gets to see her man, and even though she's part of a relationship, she's still feeling alone. I know there will be some sense of loneliness at times because, the man has to share his time equally. He can't just be with you all of the time as and when you want it, because he's got his other wives to consider. So that is something to be cautious of when thinking about going into a polygamous marriage, which is completely halal. And if it works for you, I don't think you should feel guilty about going into a polygamous marriage. But these are just some of the things to think beforehand, and not just get over, excited about everything and just marry without considering these things, because these are the realities of being in a polygamous marriage if it's not done correctly. The next thing to think about when entering or going into a polygamous marriage as the second, third or fourth wife is you should consider how this man is going to make sure you also feel like you are a priority in his life. This is coming from a place of having coached women who are second, third or fourth wives, and they feel like the first wife is always the first priority. And they feel a lot of the times, in opposition to what some women think, a lot of the time, second, third, or fourth wives really feel guilty for, not that they should, but sometimes they feel guilty for coming between the husband and the wife as, you know, a separate family. You know, they feel this sense of, I feel bad because I don't want her to feel bad. I've heard that a lot. And it's quite contrary to what a lot of people think. You know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, you came into my marriage, or you went into that marriage between that man and that woman. You became the third person. You destroyed her marriage. It was intentional. You wanted to hurt that woman. How could you do that to her? And a lot of the times they just happen to fall in love, or they just happen to see all of these good qualities in the man, and they also wanted to be a part of a relationship with that man. And so Allah has allowed it to happen in a halal way. And so she's ended up marrying that man, but it doesn't always mean that, you know, she had the intention of coming to destroy your marriage as the first wife. But going back to sisters who are thinking of entering into these polygamous relationships, make sure the man is making plans to prioritize you as well. Because women complain a lot about not feeling like they are a priority, because everything has to be, because the man has felt like he's hurt his first wife in some way, he's trying to compensate by overdoing certain things in her favor at the consequence of his other wives, right? And that is when the other wives, second, third, or fourth, if you're thinking of being an addition, begin to feel like they are not prioritized. They are not a priority, because everything is, oh, but my first wife, oh, but my first wife, oh, but my first wife. And then the second or third or fourth wife begins to think, so who am I? Am I not important if everything is all about her? This is why polygamy is, I rarely make videos about polygamy, because I think it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic. And I think it's a very sensitive topic as well. I think there is a lot of things that men are doing that is making the polygamous relationship not work. I think there is a lot of things women are doing also that is making polygamous relationship not to function. It's not for everyone. Polygamy is not for everyone to begin with anyway, because some people just don't have it in them to be able to stay in that type of a marriage. But if you're going to, I don't want you to feel like you are less than somebody else, because at the end of the day, you are also a wife. And I don't want the first wives to come for me and be like, Nafisa, why are you supporting these women? Look, I'm not. In the future, I may also make a video about experiences and feelings that the first wife has. I think that's also important. But for now, sisters, let's be fair, okay? The second, third, or fourth wife is also a wife. She is married into this marriage in a halal way. And so she also deserves to feel important in that relationship. And so that's what I'm saying to you, sisters. If the man during the talking phase is already making you feel like you're not a priority, I know you can't expect to be a priority in a big way because you're not yet married to him, right? And you won't really know if he will prioritize you until you've married him. But sometimes even in the talking stages, you can begin to get a sense of how this is going to go. And if you're beginning to sense that his first wife is always his priority and whatever she's going to say is going to go, you want to think twice before you get into that, okay? Because you might end up living in a marriage where it's not the man that's in control, it's his first wife that's actually in control of this whole situation, okay? So yeah, please make sure that you feel like you're also going to be a priority to him, because that's what being a husband to multiple wives entails. It entails all of this effort, you know. It entails all of this effort, so please consider it before you jump into a polygamous relationship. Finally, this should have been my first point, but I wanted to hold on a little bit. I want to say that make sure you are not marrying or getting involved in a polygamous relationship just to fulfill your physical needs, okay? Please do not make this mistake. I know that there are a lot of women out there who are like, I'm talking to this guy, I really have, feelings for him. I don't want to fall into zina, so let's just hurry up and get married. Yes, he has a wife before, but let's just hurry up and get married. And this let's just hurry up and get married mentality makes you make so many mistakes, because oftentimes the knot is coming from a place of, I have physical needs and I want them to be met. When you lead with that need for the physical stuff, you end up not seeing the bigger picture, and you don't realize what you put yourself into until you're actually in it, and then you're like, oh my God, what have I done? And marriage is not something you can just hop in and out of. This idea that divorce should just be easy, if it's not working, just check out. Like, this is not a dating situation. Okay, it's not a dating situation. This is a marriage. And so you take it seriously as you would if it was just you and your husband. Because a lot of the times people see polygamy as an opportunity to have physical relations with multiple women, and then say, well, it's okay because she's my wife. Yes, she's your wife and she's helping you to fulfill your needs. Now you have multiple women that can help you to fulfill that need. But there's more to a marriage than just having an opportunity to fulfill that need in a halal way. There's more to marriage than just having an opportunity to fulfill your physical desires in that way. There is more to marriage. There is commitment. There is provision. There is expectations that need to be met. Expectations that Allah has of you as the man. I'm speaking to the men here. And for women, there are responsibilities that you have. There is the managing of your emotions, because sometimes it can feel like a roller coaster being in a polygamous relationship, because it doesn't come natural to us women to want to share our husbands. And that is something that men just can't understand. It's like, what Allah said, it was halal, so how can you have a problem with it? Because she still has to fight her nafs, because every woman still wants to have her husband to herself. She doesn't want to share. Okay, she doesn't want to share. It's not in her nature to want to share. A lot of women will say, I really don't mind if my husband marries a second or a third. Wait until the wedding day. Wait until the wedding night, when her husband, who has been sleeping in the same bed as her for the last 15 years, suddenly isn't there, and she knows that he is in the bed of another woman. That is when you will begin to see the tears fall. And so most of the times, it is difficult for a woman to accept that her husband can have other wives. But it's just that some women are able to overlook that, and it can work if the man manages it really well and the women can become friends, and if they genuinely want to help each other in making this relationship work. If the women get along and they can manage their jealousy, and the man helps them to become friends, and they both want good for each other, and they're both supportive of each other, then polygamy can work. It's just unfortunate that a lot of the times it can be a challenge, but it can be done right, because everything that Allah has willed, He has a reasoning behind why He has said that can be the case. And it's just that us human beings, we go about things the wrong way, and so we take something that is very pure, can be very beautiful, that Allah has enabled, and we turn it into something else. So I want you as a woman to make sure you are not getting into this just to have your physical needs met, because that's what side chicks do. They get with a man, they have their physical needs met, but they have no commitment in their relationships. That's why I've titled it what I've titled it. But of course, as a wife, you are not a side chick. You are a wife. Listen carefully to this part of the video. You are a wife. How dare you treat yourself like you are some kind of a side chick? You are not a side chick. A wife means that you have certain rights that other wives have. You do. And you should request that those rights be fulfilled. That you came second, or you came third, or you came fourth, the timing is irrelevant to Allah. Allah has said that if a man feels that he can be just between his wives, then he can go ahead. But if he feels that he cannot, then it's better he remains with one. So it is up to the man to know if he can fulfill his responsibilities. It is not our job to make it easier for the man to marry us. It is not your job. It is a position that he should already hold, a position he should already be in before he decides, okay, yes, I can fulfill the responsibility of another wife, and therefore I'm going to go and take her. It is not your job to carry all the burden on your shoulders, hold it on your head, because he can't fulfill his responsibilities. If he can't, he shouldn't be taking multiple wives. It's as simple as that. But it is your decision to make, my dear sister. I don't think we should judge any woman that goes into polygamy. It is not an easy decision for any woman to make. Before she gets there, she's thought about it a lot. But I hope this video gives you a little bit more food for thoughts so that you can be happy in your marriage. In a polygamous marriage or not, you can be happy because, alhamdulillah, a marriage is a blessing. It is not being a side chick. It is not roaming around in a haram way. It is a beautiful blessing that Allah has given you. So make the most of it if this is the decision you've decided to make. But please make sure that man, he takes responsibility for you, sis.